Hi, everyone. All right, so we're moving on to the conversation piece of the creating client super system. This is the serving part. So, my approach to a enrollment conversation or an initial conversation with somebody all depends on how we have arrived at that moment of connecting. So, sometimes it's about somebody reaching out to me and saying, hey, I want to explore working together. Um, and so in that case, I know that they're coming for coaching. I send them a reply. I say, here, can you meet at this time or this time? And when I jump into the call with them, the first thing I say is like, what has you wanting support? Like, why did you reach out? It's that simple. If I don't think that they've ever had, let's say, coaching or counseling of any kind, I might ask them, like, is this the first time you're reaching out? Or have you ever worked with a coach? Or, like, why did you reach out to me in particular? So I might get curious, but in that case where they're reaching out to talk about working together, I don't get all hung up on creating like a context, so to speak, because they already know they're arriving to be coached. So in that case, I'm just going to start there with how can I help? Why did you reach out? What's on your mind? So if they say things like my relationship with my kids is really rough. I want a better relationship. Um, I'm just gonna dive into that. I am gonna leave it all on the table, so to speak. I'm gonna leave it all on the court. I'm gonna give them everything I've got in terms of help and support. I know there's a lot of coaching schools and programs out there that teach you to give a taster or a sample session. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I coach every single person, whether they're a client or a potential client, the exact same. I want to give you the best service that I can intentionally. I don't know if I'll actually serve you well, let's say, but in my mind, I'm not thinking like, ooh, I don't want to share that yet. I want to emphasize this because it feels like a conversation that I have a lot with coaches that have come out of different programs, that they're in that mentality of, I need to hold back in some way, or what will I coach them on if I give it all up front? And so another way that I'll get into those conversations is they'll say something like, I'm here because of my kids or my business or whatever it might be. And I'm gonna say like, well, let's dive in there. And we actually might handle it today where we don't need more work together. And at the end of today, if we want to talk about working together, or maybe we'll talk again even, we can do that. But let's get clear about what's the challenge, what's going on. And this is something that Michelle Bauman, my former coach and friend, taught. Carolyn Freyer Jones teaches this a lot. Steve does this to some degree, Steve Chandler. But it's basically called a gap conversation. And it's this basic. It's what's going on now, that like, describe your relationship with your kids. Like, what is happening that's a problem? And then intentionally, as the coach, I'm going to hear all about that, but I'm not going to really dive in too deeply. This is the gap conversation. I'm not going to dive in too deep. I'm just going to I'm going to ask a million questions like, well, why is that a problem? And, oh, they're doing drugs, but why is that painful? I'm going to just get really specific in there. And then I'm going to say, well, tell me how you wish it could be. Tell me what you wish would be happening. Tell me how you wish it would feel. Some coaches call this like, let's go to Fantasy Island, wave a wand. How do you wish it was? Whatever it was. Maybe this specific situation or maybe your whole life. Like, maybe tell me about your marriage, your business, your health. Like, give me a picture of what your ideal world looks like. And then, yeah, tell me about what's occurring right now. So you could be as specific with that, or you could go big and general. But really what it's all pointing to is, how can I really help this person? And to help them, I need to understand where they're at and where they want to go. I don't do a typical gap conversation. Like, some coaches use a whiteboard and they write out all the stuff, and that's great. I used to do that. That's totally fine. What I do is I'm more present with, like, what would make a difference today if we were to really tackle it. And when I'm asking questions about why they came in or what they're looking for, I'm going to get to understand their consciousness a bit and see, like, what kind of thinking they have. This is another school of thought. This is called doing intake. It's like really understanding where somebody's coming from within themselves. And the more I understand, the more I can point out things that seem helpful. So the initial session, so you've gone through the connecting and the inviting, and now you're in an actual session. And you're getting to the end of it. Let's just say you've had a really nice 90 minutes together. You've done everything you can think of to support this person. You're at the 90-minute mark, and somebody says, well, how do I work with you? I am going to say, if I want to work with this person, I'm going to say, do you have 20 more minutes? Or do you have another half hour right now? No? Yes? Great. Okay, yeah, let me tell you about that. We'll get into proposals in the next video. But I'm going to say, like, do you have 20 minutes, half hour? If they don't, then I'm going to say, well, let's schedule something like tomorrow. Can you meet tomorrow, or in 2 days, or next week? And actually, let's just let this session kind of settle in a bit, and then let's reconnect tomorrow or the next day and see how you're doing. And, you know, there are some things we didn't touch on. I'd be into getting into a little bit more as well. And I'm happy to share with you how I work. How does that sound? If they're like, I really want to know your prices, then I'm going to tell them. I'm not going to, like, keep it a secret. But I also know I want to have time to be with them in that moment. So if they're like, I really want to know, I don't want to take more of your time tomorrow or next day, I'm just going to say, it's totally, this is what I do. I don't care if we end up working together, if you ever pay me. This is what I do. I serve people. Sometimes it works to keep going. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's handled. Anything is fine with me. Often they're like, sure, no problem. So I'll say this for real. I mean, I've been coaching now for several years. I've maybe had one person ever say, like, no, you need to tell me now. So, I mean, I think that's something a lot of coaches are afraid of, but it rarely comes up when I just ask genuinely, can we talk tomorrow if you don't have more time now, or next week? I also like to give some space sometimes, so a day or even a week in between, because then I can send them a really nice follow-up email that's reflective and acknowledging it's not about working together, it's just about serving them. I might send them a link to a video or an article or a resource. I used to work time into my calendar, so if I had a session at noon to 1, I would schedule my next session at 1:30, so I had a half hour to think about that person that I just talked to, that new person, and be reflective and send them something helpful. So let's say we're going to talk again. I schedule it in that moment. I'm like, great, let's talk on next Tuesday at 4. Perfect. Okay, wonderful. I'll see you then. So that, and I keep people, if you're my client, you know this, I keep people like that in my calendar until it's a yes or a no. I used to spend so much time, like, hunting people down, like following up. I think I spend basically no time doing that anymore, because if you're talking to me about working together, you're either in my calendar and we're in that process, or you're not, and it's very clear. So if somebody got to an end of a session and let's say he was like, this was amazing, I loved it, I feel really good, I feel pretty complete. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Are you, is there anything else? Nope, that's it. I'm just going to be like, wonderful. have a wonderful life. If I really, really want to work with a person, like I see so much in there, I might say something like, I loved working with you. I see a lot in here. I'm very honest, to be real, very honest. Um, do you want to hear about how I work? And it's totally fine if you feel complete. Either way is great. And if they say, I actually feel good, I'm really great, and then I'll just be like, awesome, have a wonderful life. See you around. And that's it. And I might still send a follow-up email meaning just an appreciation for how they were and what they shared and the new things they saw and maybe some resources for them to check out at some point. But that email that I send after, it's not about working together. It's about support and adding on support and really building the relationship where I am now in that person's world as somebody that they can count on for support. Steve said this thing. I know a lot of you have heard me say this, but in one of his programs, he says, he used to feel like he was just having failed sales calls all day if somebody didn't want to sign up. And when he shifted to no, it's about building relationships, that bothered me so much. I'm like, I don't want more relationships. But now what I see years later is I feel like I have this huge community of people that I can connect with if I have a new program, private coaching program, or if I have a group, or if I have a workshop or a book or whatever. Huge community of people that I have these really warm, lovely relationships with through these conversations. I totally missed that the first couple of years. I wasn't looking at it that way. It was like, oh, I got a sales call and they're a sale. I mean, it was never that cut and dry, but that was there somewhere. And when it shifted to Sue Brown is calling me to talk about her daughter, I'm going to try to help Sue. Even if I'm not a fit, I'm going to find somebody to help her. Okay. Going back to the actual conversation, sometimes people come in for a session because you have invited them. You have said, hey, Tammy, I saw you post something on Facebook that looks like you're going through a really rough time. Do you want to talk? And what did I say? Sue? Tammy? If she says yes, then you've set up a session. You are like, so, Tammy, I know I invited you into this session, but what made you say yes? And she might say something like, I don't know, you seem really cool. I think it might be nice to talk to somebody. I'm going to say something like, have you ever had a coaching session? And I'm going to just say things like, coaching it's about supporting you. It's about me sitting inside myself and in my own consciousness in a way where I'm looking at how to serve you. This is your time. This isn't about us getting to know each other, so to speak. It's about us connecting and being authentic and genuine with each other. And I'm going to just share things that I see that might be helpful. Is that okay with you? I ask for a lot of permission with new people. Like, is it okay if I share some feedback? Can I give you some coaching around this? That's just nice for both parties to feel that. And then I'm going to go into it. I'm like, tell me why you said yes. And I'm going to let her describe what's going on. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to share everything I can that could be helpful. If we get to the end of the hour and she says, how can I work with you? I'm going to do the thing where I say, do you have another half hour? The thing I just want to emphasize, I don't have a formula for what I do in an enrollment conversation. The gap is on my mind because it's obvious. It's like, why is somebody saying yes to this conversation? Like, what are they grappling with, and where do they want to go? Like, what are they feeling stuck with? Where do they want to go? And it's also, this kind of goes into the proposal piece a bit, but it's also a time where you can share a little bit of like, Well, the way that I work with my clients around this issue, Steve actually once gave me a challenge to share 2 client stories, success stories, in every enrollment conversation. And in service to serving them, really, like helping them see what's available, helping them see the way that I help similar people in similar situations. So that's something, again, these aren't rules or tools, as Steve would say. But just for me, the facilitation perspectives that I'm sending out throughout the course of the program, that's where I'm coming from inside. I'm looking at them as divine beings, as these souls that are here, and I'm looking at them as infinitely creative and free and limited by nothing in the physical world. So how I hold them inside my consciousness, I think that's the most important thing. What else do I want to say? I think, for these conversations, my main thing is slow it down. Like you don't have to rush to the finish line. I asked Steve last spring if he could give his new coach self some feedback or advice, what would it be? And what Steve said is he would have really slowed down the enrollment process. And, he shared, he's like, that in that enrollment period, it can be so helpful to get to know the person a bit more and just create rapport and really connect. And only through connecting and serving them will it ever make sense for them to work together with you. Like, you might know how amazing you are, but they don't know. They don't know what's available unless you slow it down and really seek to serve. So if I get to the end of a session with somebody and they're like, God, this was great, thank you, and I'm not ready to talk about working together. Like, even if they brought it up, I would say, like, let's talk again. What I'll say is something like, this has been wonderful. It's so good to meet you. I'm glad that we got into X and Y. There are still some things over in Z that we didn't touch on. Would you be up for talking again? Again, 99.9% of the time, they're like, yeah, of course. So I set up another session. I only have, I would say, like 2 to 3 maximum sessions with a non-paying client before I want to clarify, are we complete? Do you want to work together? Do I want to work with them? Before we get into that. So there's a whole process for if somebody just doesn't bring it up, and if you're feeling unclear, it's like, it's so nice to just call it complete. To be like, this has been lovely. Do you feel done? That might happen after the first one or the third one. I think in this little pocket, this is the meat where you're actually serving somebody. I think the real value comes in your own growth. Like you doing your own looking inward, your own healing, your own lifting, because where you're coming from, your way of being, your way of seeing, your own level of freedom and clarity about your thinking and all of that will translate. Like, that's the stuff that's going to come through more than anything that you do. It's your way of being, how you're being. That's what matters. It's like you don't have to do anything in those sessions except seek to serve. Like, how can I be helpful? And truly, it can just take care of itself. They can just ask, how do I work with you? And you say how you work, and then you carry on. Like, you don't need to get good at sales. I'm going to talk about this in the proposal piece, but I don't want to be good at sales. I want to be good at serving people, period. Okay, I think that is a wrap on this one, and there's so much more of always, but I'll just leave it at that for now.